I went from never touching the field on my freshman football team to being ranked number 48th in the nation for rugby. So, guys, uh, basically, what I'm just trying to say here this week, my little life advice is you may think your life's going to go in one direction, and then it could go completely the other way. But one of the important things you have to do is you have to be ready for this change. You have to be open to it. If you're always closed minded about everything you do, you'll never see the opportunities in front of you. So, back to my actual life. So, basically, what had happened was I started really getting into football around 7th to 8th grade that summer. Okay. 7th to 8th grade summer. Now, I don't know if you knew this, but 7th to 8th grade summer to get into football is pretty late, but people do it a lot. So that was me. So basically, what I did was I knew I was going to go to probably a really competitive football school for high school. I mean, so I put in as much work as I possibly could throughout all of my 8th grade year. So what I did was I'd wake up every morning at 5 a.m. I'd go to the gym. I'd work out for an hour, do explosive training, do training that would help me as my position group, which was a wide receiver at the time. Then after that, I'd go to school. I'd have a long day of school. Then after that, I'd go to football practice. And I did that for most of the year. And I just kept going every single day, kept going in the gym. After football practice, I'd be really tired too. And then I'd have to drive all the way home. I wouldn't get home till probably around 9 o'clock, and then I'd have an hour of homework to do. So 10 o'clock, which I mean, it isn't the latest, but still, after you're doing all that physical exertion, you're going to get tired really tired really fast. So that's what happened to me. But I had grit, I had determination, and it was more than anything I wanted. I wanted to be that one player on the field and where he catches the ball, he does a great run, and then the entire crowd goes, "He's a freshman." I wanted that so badly, so badly. So I was willing to make the sacrifices. I put in the work, meal prep, working out. I was analyzing film. I was doing all that stuff because I knew there was a huge gap between the people who started when they were 6 versus me who started when I was 13 or 14 at the time. So I was putting in this huge effort. And then I'm just trying my hardest, trying to get better every single day, every single day. And then I decided to go to my current high school. And my current high school, I'm not going to name it, but it's a really competitive sports school, really competitive for all sports, but particularly football and basketball. Okay, if you know, you know. Anyway, really really competitive for football and basketball. So I go to football practice, the first kind of official freshman practice. Now, at the time, unbeknownst to me, there had been practices going the entire summer, but I didn't actually go to my first practice until around football camp, which was in August. So that's when my first practice was. Now, initially, um, we were just running routes, and then we were having one on ones. So basically, one on ones, for those of you who don't know, I'm pretty much sure most of you do know, but a one on one is basically you have one DB, one wide receiver, and the wide receiver is trying to run and get past the DB and catch the ball and score a touchdown while the DB is trying to keep the wide receiver under coverage the entire time. So I was doing wide receiver. So every single time I take my rep, I go 100%, always trying to cook the other person. And I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't bad. I was not bad at football. I put in all that work. I was pretty good. I can't lie. But the only thing is my school was so good at football that even though I was good, other people were just better. Okay. Now, when I realized this, like I realized how competitive it was going to be, I was like, okay, competitiveness, put me in, coach. I'll do anything I got to. I'll put in the work. Okay, just put me in, give me a chance. And you know, one of the things that kind of really still kind of makes me frustrated when I think about the situation is I never really got that chance. But you know what? It's no big deal. But what happened was we'd go through the entire season. Um, there were a lot of uh, bad moments of tension between players and the coaches and the parents because We only won, I think, one game despite being such a good sports school. And this is for freshman football. This isn't accounting for varsity or JV. This is just freshman. But we only won one game. Despite the fact we only won one game, we kept the same starting lineup the entire season. So the coaches didn't think it was be smart to change a couple players. And this was a really big problem because, first of all, our starting quarterback during the game against our arch rival school, because he threw a pick six, he threw his helmet on the ground and gave up on the play. Now, the whole purpose of this story isn't to complain about my freshman football team. That was in the past. I've reflected on it. I've grown as a person. I don't care about it anymore. The purpose of me talking about this past experience of this like tumultuous relationship between me and football at the time is just to illustrate how much better I would become at rugby. So rugby is a pretty niche sport in the United States, but it's really competitive. It's becoming even more competitive now, especially after the women's team placed third in the Olympics. Congratulations to them, by the way. Now, basically, how did I find out about rugby in the first place? So my cousin, she went to a really good rugby school. I'm not gonna say which one, and she was really good at rugby. And then she said, "Hey, you should go play rugby," to me. And I was like, "Okay, you know what? I may as well give it a chance." And this was around the same time as football. So I given rugby a chance, and it was cool, but football was my main passion. Football was my lifeblood. It was the moment I woke up in the morning, I got dressed, and I kept going throughout the day was for football. And then after the freshman season ended, I had this like empty hole in my heart, my chest, because I felt like the thing I've been working so hard for, the thing that drove me, it just I I knew deep down it wasn't gonna be, it wouldn't work out. Um, I know, there's always the argument, keep playing, keep putting in the work, keep putting in the effort, it'll work out. And you know what? I think for there are circumstances definitely where that does happen, but I also think it's important to acknowledge the circumstances where it's like running at a brick wall, where even if you keep going, you're still gonna get hurt in the end. And there's no truly going through it. I mean, you may make a little dent in the wall, maybe, but is a dent worth it when you could just maybe walk around the wall or go do something different? You know what I'm saying? So even though people do definitely keep putting in the work and they become that starting on varsity, you also have to admit there are a lot of times where people don't do that and then they go do something else. So anyway, back to the rugby thing. So yeah, after football, I was just empty because I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I don't have any motivation to do. You go to the gym to eat right because what had been motivating me was football, and now I feel like football isn't a part of me anymore because I know I'm not gonna be the starter. Okay, so then I go to just the entire winter. I'm just not really doing anything. I'm just being kind of lax. It is go through life, going through the motions. Winter ends and spring starts to roll around. And I don't know if you knew this, but for high school rugby, it's mainly a spring sport. So I was like, okay, I'll play rugby too. I got to the rugby field, and then when I first stepped foot on the rugby field, I felt something kind of different. First of all, team chemistry was completely different. I don't know if you've ever been on a football field or not, but it's really something. It's kind of unique because you are one team, but at the same time, you're trying to compete against your own teammates. Versus with rugby, I mean, obviously not everybody would have a spot. But when I went on that field, I really felt like those guys would have my back. And keep in mind, this is on the first day of practice. Just going through the motions. If I dropped the ball, if somebody else dropped the ball, you wouldn't criticize them. You wouldn't make fun of them. You wouldn't clown on them like you would for football. You'd help them back up. You'd give them some advice on how to not drop the ball next time. And then this just really also reflected in the coach. I'm not going to say the coach's name. This coach doesn't coach at my school anymore, but he was one of probably the best coaches I'll ever have in my life. He was a funny guy, and he was often understaffed, believe it or not, but he made do of what he had, and he built a really good team, a really close knit team, and a team that I think this year we're gonna win our championship, make it all the way through. But anyway, besides that, yeah, the team chemistry he built was just completely different. And he ended up turning the team from a team that previously had lost by 100 points, which even in rugby, I don't know, that's really bad, even in rugby, to a team that was a playoff contender. And he did that in 2 years' time, which was amazing. But he didn't do this through the football methodology, which would be to criticize his players, put them down. If they didn't do the right thing, they wouldn't start. If they could miss as many practices as they wanted to, as long as they were good. He didn't do this. He didn't let these excuses fly. He had one vision. He made it so that we were one group, one team, and we worked together. And we built ourselves up from the ground, and then we made it to the playoffs. Unfortunately, we lost, but still, the whole point is just it was something completely different. I know I just talked a lot about these two very unrelated things to me going from uh, not playing in football to being number 48 in the nation for rugby. Well, it actually is super related. Now, let me explain why. So, basically, I knew that day, that first day of practice, okay, this is what I'm doing. Football, you can leave, okay? Goodbye, football. I know, I put a lot of effort into you, but it's like when you chase a girl and she doesn't want you back, but you keep going, and then eventually you realize that she was never worth it. Okay, you've got to focus on yourself, focus on something else, focus on somebody that actually cares about you. So then you leave the girl alone, you go do the other thing. That's what rugby was to me. And I decided to pursue rugby full time. And basically, it just, that hole that was in my heart filled instantaneously as soon as I made that decision. Now, rugby was still really competitive, but because I had put in the effort for football, it made it a whole lot easier to be on that starting varsity spot. Now, you may be thinking this is just a bunch of random nonsense, okay? Well, trust me, stick with me now, okay? This is going to get very relevant to everybody's lives, not just rugby and football, okay? Now, so I started, playing rugby and then taking that series full time. Then eventually I just wanted it more and more to get better every day at rugby. So instead of wanting to get better at football, I wanted to get better at rugby. I just kept pursuing it over and over and over again. And that same foundation that I had built through football was so present in rugby. You have no idea. In the way I cut, in my strength, in my discipline, all of it was there. And even though it never came to fruition through football, it did come to fruition through rugby. Now, this all kept going. It kept cycling over and over and over again, this cycle of success, until eventually, most recently, this past summer, I went to a camp at a really good rugby school. I'm not going to say which one. And there were a bunch of college coaches there. And one of the coaches wasn't a college coach, but he ran this organization called Prep Rugby Watch. Prep Rugby Watch is basically just a ranking organization uh, for people that play rugby in the United States. It's completely free, and yeah, it's one of the main ones for ranking rugby recruits. And then I was at the time. I mean, I thought I was pretty good. You know what I'm saying? But I didn't really think I was top 100 in the nation level good. But I was like, there's only one way to find out, right? So we have to take that risk one way or another. So that's what I decided to do. I submitted my film, and then within a week, 1 week, 7 days, which is really, really fast for ranking film for any sport, they ranked me at number 48th in the nation. 48th in the nation. So out of 100 of the best rugby players, I'm 48. And I'm a junior, so that still leaves a bunch of time to even get that up higher. And a 3-star. Now, I'm not trying to brag, and some of you may think that being ranked at rugby isn't an accomplishment. Well, that's not what I'm here to argue, to debate about. Which, for the record, it totally is. I mean, I've got rugby recruitment offers, but that's not the point. The point is that I set a foundation, and even though my initial plan didn't work out, I went to plan B. And plan B ended up being more meaningful, made me more happy than plan A ever could have. And because I wasn't closed minded, I was open minded, plan B ended up leading me to grow as a person, to grow in every aspect of my life, and just become better overall. So, what I'm saying to you guys is even though you may think your life may be going in one way, you may want your life to go in one way like I did. Keep your mind open. What I'm not saying is, I'm not saying to give up on your dreams. Dreams are important. I'm not saying give up on your goals. Goals are important. But I'm saying it's important to not be closed minded, because this quote is always really important to me. My mom says it all the time. Okay. God never says no. Okay. Bear with me now, even if you're not a Christian. God never says no. He only ever says yes, not right now, or I've got something better for you planned. Think about your life through that lens from now on. God never says no. He either says yes, I've got something better, or later. One of those three, always. Okay. And if you live your life through that mindset, you're going to be open and you're going to be seeing a lot more different amazing opportunities in your everyday life. So just be open minded, be happy, and eventually it'll lead you to extraordinary new opportunities.